Hi guys, I'm Rob.
I'm Geraldine.
And this is our podcast, Gay Book Friends, abbreviated as GBF, just as a coy little...
Coy? Oh.
Yeah, a little coy shout out to GBF, if you're familiar with the term.
It's our first episode, and for our first episode, we decided to read Cemetery Boys.
By Aidan Thomas, which was a YA novel that I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, so it's gotten a lot of buzz for good reason, I think.
Very good reason. It's actually the first book by a trans author to be a best-selling novel of the New York Times. It's good to see representation like that because so much about trans identity I don't think is very understood and everywhere. The media,
I think
culture.
This book benefits a lot from being so specific in its experience.
Yes, so specific. Because you have a trans Latinx author, then you have a trans Latinx character. It's a trans Latinx story. And, the questions of sexuality, gender identity, they all come up very naturally and in a way that it's, necessary to the story. And you can tell the person who wrote it knew what they were doing. And it's just, very cute, actually.
It's a very fun novel.
It's a really cute book, you guys.
We wanted to start off with something that had meaning, but was also just fun and campy in a way.
Yeah, and I don't hate reading a YA novel.
No, listen.
We are not young adults, but...
I mean...
But this is something that's, a very profound YA novel. I think, adults who want to go on, a fun adventure, but also, from a completely different perspective should read this. It's a love story, spoiler, that's, one, a ghost love story, which, who doesn't eat that right up? One's a ghost, one's not. It's gay and trans, and just, I mean... There's not a book that I've read that's necessarily this.
I think if we're going to talk about YA in general, I don't know, YA is just, sometimes it's just more fun than reading all these, sad, depressing adult fiction books that are, it's just
every gay love story I read is tragic, and that's a trope within itself. And like we were saying before, and in our little prologue episode, we're going to read all gay books. We're going to, pretty much everything we're going to read is gay, and if it's not gay, then we're going to make it gay. And what will come up a lot is that gay stories lend themselves to tragic endings all the time, and finding gay joy, queer joy, it's really hard to find. And sometimes you want to cry, but if you don't want to cry, well, you could cry in a YA novel. Yeah, but
cried a lot.
I cried a lot. But if you want to be detached from I don't know, the reality of what it's like to be an adult who's in love and gay, well then just jump into they're old enough to be in love, certainly they're teens, and it's just fun.
The experience of being a teenager is very intense.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Just listen to Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo.
Okay.
The #1 song in the country. But I think, what this book does is it touches on really, sappy, melodramatic, adorable teenage montages of love, but it's, in a way that you never see represented in anything. I am struggling. Where are you going to find a lot of trans love stories? I think in recent times, we have shows like Pose, Euphoria, which feature, gay and trans characters, both of them do. And then number 2, it's just nice to see that it's there is that opportunity for trans kids to have fun and be teenagers.
Yeah.
You don't really get to see that.
This book is very this is my culture. This is the people I'm around. This is how I celebrate it. And neither of us are part of that culture. So the way we respond to it might come from a different place.
Yeah.
But hopefully we're being respectful throughout the whole thing. The thing I realized when I was looking up all these interviews was all of the characters are Latinx. There is not a single white character.
Yeah, this is not for the white gays. This book is not for the white gays and the white gays. So basically, brujeria is an occult religious practice that's popular in Latin American cultures. And it's sort of like a witchcraft, I guess. And they go through that in the book where they're I'm not a witch, I'm a brujo. I'm not a witch, I'm a bruja. And what is so cool about this story is that not only is it a trans story of coming out and coming out to your family, understanding your identity, but it sort of shows how in society, the societal gender roles of what men are expected to do or what women are expected of, but in a Latinx community, and specifically in this Bruex community where the powers you're going to receive, the privileges you have, your entire role in the community is based off of your gender, and how difficult that is when you're transgender. And specifically this character, their parent is the leader of the community, their grandma is the spiritual leader of the community, and they have their own expectations, they have their own rules, and they don't see Yadriel's identity as valid at all. So not only are they battling, okay, I'm going to live in America as a trans person, I have to sort through this being myself in this community, which is basically like their whole life.
And it's a community that he loves so much. That he can't separate himself from that community. Like, he's not willing to sacrifice the community.
No, he wants to be a brujo, like, period. And that's like the first, when you open the book, and this is a good way to go. And so when you first start the book, like, I actually started reading it, and it was really late at night, and I just wanted to be chill and just read something. That's, the beginning is, like, strong. It's sort of like you're going through it, and it's a million words that you don't know. Not because they're in a different language, but because they're just literally, like, it's like, I'm a brujo, and I have my aqualare, and then I have to get my portage, and then I have to go do the ceremony. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna wait until I'm fully awake, because it hits you really strong.
A lot of exposition that has to be done.
Yeah, this writer doesn't have any, like, imagery or mood in the beginning. I think when it started,
I did notice that, like, when I first started reading it, it felt sort of dry, like all this information.
It felt a little pragmatic. Yeah. Like, it was just listing off so many things, and you don't know anything. Like, I knew, okay, this is a ghost love story. I knew that it was a trans story. That's all I knew. And it was Latinx. So I started, and I'm just like, well, this is like, I'm learning too much. It was like a dictionary of all these things. And I was like, I really don't want to learn. Like, I just want to, like, meet these characters. Like, I wanted to read and just have fun. That's not how this first chapter goes. Within the first chapter, you've already established that this person has this crazy conflict that's not just being a trans person in a Latinx community. It's like they have a goal and a mission to complete a ceremony that has special pieces and ingredients and processes, and they have a hydro flask filled with blood, with chicken blood. That's like page 1, and there's parts of it that entices you to keep going, but it's heavy in the beginning. It doesn't smoothly start.
Yeah, like, we didn't really get to know Yadriel in the first chapter at all.
No, it was like, there's Yadriel, who's a boy doing something he wants to do, and his bestie, who's, like, spunky.
She's hag.
There. Yeah, literally just hag. She is hag. Like,
definition.
She is down to fight. Like, it's great. And she'll just, she has her pink hair. She's, like, a vegan. So it plays into all those fun tropes of, like, this is the LGBTQ of this community. Whether or not she's queer, I don't even know. But it's, like, reminds me of just, like, the friends you have when you're young and you're gay, and it's just, and they're like cousins. Are they cousins, or are they just friends?
I think they're technically, like,
cousins. It's a little bit vague how everyone's related.
Like, in these, like, heavy, like, cultural communities where, like, you call everyone a cousin. You call, like, every, like, person an aunt. Like,
Yeah, like, I think he calls their parents.
I think his actual cousin is Miguel, but, like,
yeah. So the main conflict of the story, which established in, like, right away after so much happens in the beginning. Like, when you read it, or if you've read it, whatever, you'll see. And his cousin now has died. And it's because spiritually everyone's connected through the magic of this culture. So when someone gets hurt or someone's dead, like, you sense it. So that kind of sparks the initial conflict that mysteriously a cousin of Yadriel's and Mauritia's is dead. And so they have to figure out why, and they don't really understand. And this cemetery, it's called Cemetery Boys, because he lives in a cemetery with spirits. And it's normalized, like, spirits just live amongst the humans until they're ready to pass on, or they're forced to, because they've gone, they call it, like, maligno, or they've just gone sour. They turn bad, they turn into, like, a monster, basically.
Sour candy.
Yeah. Stream it. Cut through all of this explanation. Now it's like, if he can find his cousin, retrieve the soul, it will prove that he is a brujo, because being a brujo in his culture, in his life, is equivalent to being a man, is equivalent to... That's, like, the final step in securing his gender identity. He knows his gender, his friends know his gender, but he just has this last hump to get over with his family, because he wasn't allowed to, like, complete this ritual to become a brujo, because his father wouldn't let him.
But we find out this ritual that he was performing actually summoned a ghost.
Yeah, he summons this cute boy, who is quite adorable. Like, I'm, like, a little obsessed. Like, I love, me, like, I have the biggest soft spot in the world for stupid boyish characters, and, like, in this book they're, like, 16, so that, I don't mean to sound, like, weird, whatever, but
listen, we appreciate himbo culture.
Yeah, he's a himbo, like through and through, and Yadriel I don't think knows how to process what's going on, because we really don't get to know the character that well, so we don't really know what type of personality he's really bringing to the table. He's just very determined to help and prove himself, right? So other than that, though, it's like, what's his chemistry like with boys? Because we learn, he says right at the bat, like, I'm into guys, like, it comes up somewhere. And now we have this cute boy who he summoned who's a ghost.
Yeah. And
basically his name's Julian, and he's just this, like, East LA skater boy who I guess, like, comes from a family like where he didn't grow up with like a mother, has like his own family issues, doesn't come from a lot of privilege, and is, I guess, referred to as like the street kids. They live on the streets. Some of them are homeless, some of them aren't, and he has his own chosen family. So we also have this huge theme of chosen family.
Which is something you see a lot in gay culture.
And gay culture, and this is a book about like your chosen family and that culture versus the culture that you love, you know, the culture of your family, and that's sort of like
not
a battle.
Necessarily the conflict of that, but like
how you have both.
Yeah.
First of all, Julian's gay. His friends are gay. He has another friend who's trans. So something that I loved in the book too was just how smoothly like Julian and Yadriel were able to just come understand each other. And like there's a whole page where Yadriel's like, we're in my bedroom because now that he's conjured this soul, he's like, okay, well, you got to stick with me because I don't know what's going on. And he's like, I'm trying to release you to the underworld, or not the underworld, the afterlife, not the underworld, the afterlife. And he can't. This soul will not leave Earth. So Julian's trapped here. We don't know why. Yadriel stuck with him because he doesn't know what to do with him, but he thinks it's kind of cute. So he's like, we can have a sleepover.
Oh.
Yadriel's like kind of annoyed by him. He's like, what's going on? I have to basically show the ropes to this soul because he doesn't know what's going on. Yadriel doesn't even know why, because this person isn't a brujo. Like, he's not magic, so his soul should have just passed on.
He just absorbs everything so quickly.
Yeah.
Adjusts so well.
That's one thing that I was like questioning. I'm like, is he a real person?
I think once you get to know the characters, like,
it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I'm like, there was no crisis of him being like, I'm dead. He was just like, okay, well, that's really weird.
For his benefit. Like, I mean, if I became a ghost, like, I wouldn't want to be a ghost right now, but I would love to be a ghost.
Oh, I'm planning on being a ghost.
Who would you haunt?
Like, everyone. Definitely you. Definitely. But I would want everyone to know that, like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here, and I'm queer, and I'm dead. I'm ready to die. Not now, but when I... When I do die, I hope that this happens to me, because it's sort of like you got to reflect on... This is obviously when you're a ghost. This is common in ghost stories, too. He gets to reflect on what he left behind, because he gets to interact with his family and his brother from the other side of them reacting to him not being around. And he learns a lot about that conflict. But basically, nothing happens love story like in the beginning. They're just pals. Which I appreciate. Yeah, which I think is really great, because this really gives us the time to know Yadriel as a person. I think
a lot of YA books, like, sell their books based upon romance, but... the relationship, it's not hitting you over the head. It's not like, oh, obviously. Where, like, I started questioning, like, how.
If I didn't know it was supposed to be, like, a teen romance from the start, then I wouldn't have necessarily thought they were going to get together. Not because they don't have chemistry, but just because it's got so many other things than that. They don't focus on this budding relationship between them really at all. It's just they kind of grow really, like, just endeared to each other because they want to protect each other.
They're both very endearing characters.
Yeah, I love them. I'll just say that. I love both of them so much. I don't have a character in this book, honestly, and this is supposed to be like a shady podcast or whatever about what we dislike, but I can't think of someone that I, like, hated.
Like, honestly, it might have been more fun if there was a character we hated.
Yeah, that's what I look forward to, honestly. This book wasn't... dry is the wrong word to use. It has a horrible connotation, but there's just no fat. Like, the book it has the characters, it has their plan,
it follows
and it moves.
A very clear line.
It's a tight script. Yeah. They know what they have to do, and which essentially, just to regroup,
and I would say it's even sort of predictable.
The reason I don't mind it being predictable, though, is because it's still, like, such a unique story for the characters.
Yeah.
If this was... okay, this is obvious. If it was just some witch bitch who fell in love with the boy, like, no one would read this.
Yeah.
Like, they live in LA, and I don't know, I guess she would be a witch, and then she met a ghost boy. No. Everything that happens has a different context because they're Latinx, because he's in this community, because, you know... this touches on basically the issue of, like, street violence, gang violence. He lives a dangerous life, Julian. He doesn't have a family, but Yadriel has everything that he never had. And that's sort of like this dichotomy, but Yadriel is struggling so hard. He says, like, oh my god, you're actually lucky. Like, I wish I had your family. He's dead named by his grandmother, dead named by his father in the first half of the book.
See, the way I read this, though, is there are instances where, like, his family is problematic, but I do think his family, they're just trying to understand and get used to it, but they just don't think it's possible. They think it's out of the realm of possibilities, especially in their culture that's, you know, like we said, it was so centered on like gender and their roles in this society that they just don't know if that's possible. And maybe, you know, not even trying sort of speaks to something, but I do think like there's so much love in the family culture. It's not like, you know, they don't kick him out, you know?
No.
They're just slowly
They're not villains.
Yeah.
There's really, honestly, the one thing is there's no villain in this story until, like, the end. There is no villain. And when the villain is there, I'm like, okay.
Wait, maybe we do hate him.
Yeah, okay, this is the issue with the ending of the book. You're waiting for all the dominoes to fall into place, and you know that something's gonna go wrong. And you don't know how. And
I sort of knew how.
So there's a reveal. It's the fact that after all of this journeying, they're trying to find the dead cousin. They're trying to give Julian his closure with his family because he wants to make sure his friends were okay. Julian was mysteriously killed, does not know how. All he knows is that he was with...
And he wants his tacos.
A group of his friends. Yeah, he's hungry as fuck. All the whole book. And I guess, like, and he eats... There's some food that ghosts can eat and there's some food that they can't. This book was unclear in some ways.
In terms of, like, how the rules of the ghosts.
Yeah. But that's with every fantasy.
But it's also, like, I don't care.
I didn't really care. No.
Am I sitting here thinking, like, no.
No. I was thinking in my head, though, I'm like, so are they gonna, like, be able to, like, touch? Because I knew they were gonna kiss. And they do. The villain, we were talking about the villain. The villain of the story there is no villain. It's just the villain is transphobia and tradition. But now, there's this character in the book, which is actually, and this I guess is where like the irony, it was supposed to be like a gag, because Yadriel has this uncle who was born like powerless, doesn't have the potency in his blood.
He said, let me be oppressed.
That character, to me, just did nothing.
Yeah, I did not like him, but, he's set up as...
I never found you funny. I never found you entertaining. I never found you smart. I just found you annoying.
Yeah, I did.
But the whole conceit is he's the same, basically, as Yadriel.
And they connect over the fact that neither of them are really welcomed into the traditions of the community because one doesn't have powers or the capability for it, and one of them isn't allowed to access them because they don't believe that because Yadriel identifies as a man, that Lady Death, the god of death, is going to grant him powers because they see him not his identity.
Yeah, but Catrice... They just keep mentioning him throughout this book.
He bubbles up, and I'm like, go to bed.
And
like,
then
he's
it's like...
he's the uncle that lurks in, like, the kitchen.
And there's this one scene where, like, Julian was like, oh, him? That weird guy in the corner, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And, like, Yadriel's always trying to, like, defend him. I could kind of figure out that he's he does something.
I just didn't expect there to be a bad guy. That's with me, because I just thought the book was gonna make a beautiful statement about having love and then losing it.
It's just so straightforward. Not straightforward, you know. It
Not
just
straight.
Feels...
It's nothing about this book is straight, but continue.
It just feels very, like, it should follow, and it does follow a very traditional, like, plot structure, especially when it comes to, like, YA, but it just doesn't feel like that.
I think it was done a little bit too well, so where it was like, there was less mystery. Like, I wasn't dying to figure out where Miguel was. I forgot.
I did not care about
Did not really care about him because we don't meet him.
Which is sad because he seems sweet.
Yeah, well, that's all we know. Is every time this poor boy who's murdered at the onslaught of the book
is an ally.
He is so nice. He has nice brown hair. He has kind eyes. He, like, works in the... He stayed home to take care of someone.
You know what?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
I would like to meet Miguel.
You know what? I feel bad shitting on Miguel because he's probably great, and he unfortunately dies. But we get to the point in the story where something's going on. Julian, who is a ghost.
They actually get back to, like, the whole idea.
Yeah, for me, it rushes. The Day of the Dead comes on November 1st. Yadriel's gonna meet his mom again. She gets to come back for 2 days and live amongst...
Which he forgets about.
Yeah, like, I was so excited to have a moment where now we've really, because his mother was, like, his ally. Like, she always understood more, had the tools to understand, okay, his identity is valid, and he can be a brujo, he can have blah, blah, blah. So I want to meet her. And we're racing towards that, and that's all I'm thinking about. And she's really not a character until the epilogue of this book, which is not an epilogue.
Yeah.
It's the same day.
It's a chapter.
Yeah, it's just a chapter. I was, like, excited to jump forward, but we didn't jump forward at all. We just went to the next day. We get to this point where it is Day of the Dead, and we're gonna have this, but instead it's like...
It doesn't feel...
Wait, we're running to the dungeon of this ancient church, where like, out of, like, nowhere.
But at the same time, it doesn't feel climactic at all.
No, because I laughed when all of a sudden we're in this dungeon with this, like, dancing green and blue light. It's, like, terrifying. Like,
sounds like a gay club.
Yeah, they find their way down here, and there's just bodies laid out on random tables, which also sounds like a gay club. And they're like, what is going on? And he's like, I'm freaking out. Here's Julian's dead body, but he's not dead. And he turns around and he's like, Uncle Catrice, just like a jaguar. And then it's like, hey.
It's just like, oh, he's here.
He literally says, hey, like, you found it. Like, me and you, boo. The uncle's under the impression that Yadriel doesn't have a place in the community and doesn't really understand that he has powers, right? So...
But he does find out before then.
Confusing. Yadriel says something along the lines of like, but I conjured the spirit of Julian, which would mean that he has powers. But the uncle was the only one who knew that Yadriel even went through the ceremony of having the powers.
I was going to say something, but then even that doesn't make sense. Because I was going to say, oh.
I said it doesn't. Disagreeing.
I thought you said don't say it.
Oh, no! Don't say it. Don't do it.
Because it would have made more sense, you know, in terms of plot and explaining what is happening, that, like, his uncle sees him be able to do this thing that everyone thought is impossible. Mm-hmm. And that encourages the uncle. But the uncle has already killed 2 people.
Oh, yeah. He killed 4.
Yeah.
All 4 bodies.
So... what was the point of him finding out?
I don't know. I think it was supposed to endear us to the uncle because Yadriel has this tool, this like knife that means when you're a brujo and you have your magic, you have this tool. And it's a big secret. No one can see it. So one time his dad is about to see it. He's about to find out and it's a big secret. And the uncle's like, wait, like, no, look at, like, he caused a whole distraction. So now we're supposed to think, oh, this uncle's like Yadriel's ally. That's why. But still, I forgot the uncle was a thing. And there's so many movies where, oh, like the innocent person, you didn't expect it to be behind all of this. But behind what? Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, the grandma at some point, when everyone's just hanging out, doing something. She keeps going
like, where is that?
She's like, where is the jaguar knives that when you use it, and why she wants it?
No idea.
She just goes, Yadriel, have you seen the ancient,
like, why was she even looking for them? We don't know why they're important.
Yeah, we never know. And it's brought up twice. She's like, yeah, you had to help me find these. Or she's like, Catrice, couldn't you get them from the top shelf? And he's like, oh yeah, ma, like, I'll do it. Meanwhile, he already took out 4 people, has them in a dungeon has these...
Sounds kinky.
So is he gay? Because he's like 50, and he's seemingly, his life sucks. I mean, his brother has a wife and children, and is the leader of the... Because that's also part of his complex, that his little brother is the leader of the community, even though he was the firstborn.
But it's like, who cares?
No one cares. This man who's angry about his unfulfilled destiny is reacting. It's like a Scar story from Lion King. I don't know if Scar was older, but who gives a fuck? The point is they're brothers, one's jealous of the other. Okay. I just want them to kiss. I just want the boys to have fun. Like, I didn't care. This fight is like, what happened? It's like a page and a half, and there's a scuffle. I didn't know what was happening. Like, okay, the uncle has the powers.
This is the thing about this book. The book is so well done.
She's hitting me. Calm me down.
The book is so well done in representation, in characterization, in building relationships, and making us feel something for these characters. But it's not compelling.
Is it called like situational irony? Where it's like, oh, he's the villain, but he was the nice guy. I didn't have that experience at all.
It's just not convincing enough. Like, it's not strong enough in those other aspects. But I forgive them because...
Oh, yeah, we forgive them.
So, like, nothing we're saying, like, even matters.
Yeah, our opinions on this doesn't matter because the book is great. But, like, yeah, I think, for a YA novel, it moves through so swiftly. It covers a lot of ground about all the different cultures, queer, Latinx, everything, and love. Like, you really... By the time these characters... Like, even though we said we weren't expecting it to happen, like, when they ended up kissing, which is, like, the most melodramatic. Like, they went to a party on the beach, and then they're driving in a stolen car down the Pacific Coast Highway, going up to Lookout Point, laughing. Probably by the Hollywood sign. The sun is setting. They're blasting music from the car.
We're in the car right now.
Yeah, and they're just and Yadriel's looking over, just so falling in, like, just drenched in love.
Yadriel's eyes are on the road.
It's funny because it all moves really quickly, but that's probably one of my favorite parts of the book was, like, I wanted to see finally when they do have, like, this big moment, because they spend a lot of time, where the author does go into a lot of imagery is describing, like, the touch and the electricity between the two of them, because
it is sort of an alluring concept when you talk about, like, paranormal romance.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, how does it work, though?
Yeah, you really want to know, because he starts off as a ghost where everything he touches, his hand goes through it, but when he's feeling his most passionate, when he's his most angry, or, like, times when he's triggered about, like, trauma in his life, he acts out and he can punch holes in the wall. He has a violent side for sure, which we could talk about because there's a whole chapter. We'll get to it when he can't be with Yadriel and he's trying to get to him. I'm like, calm the fuck down. I'm like, does Yadriel feel this way about you? And that also came out of nowhere because we know that they like each other, but you don't know how much Julian really feels. And towards the end of the book, we get a chapter basically, from like his perspective. That is very intense.
Yeah.
So
which feels out of nowhere.
Yeah, felt out of nowhere. But you liked it. You want that moment. You want these teens to have like their big, like the way he describes kissing a ghost. It's like, I love that. Like that's exactly how I feel like they would feel.
I want a ghost boyfriend.
Oh, I fully want a ghost boyfriend. Sometimes it feels like a CW script. Like this is very common in YA novels where the dialogue that goes on is a little bit unnatural. Like there's this character, Flocka, who is a trans woman, and there's just a moment where Yadriel meets this character, basically really introduces himself for the first time to her. And it's just something about the dialogue between it. It felt a little bit unnatural. Because I'm like, would they say this to each other? It just made me laugh. Not laugh, but she's like, what's your real name? Much better.
This book is probably being picked up by some studios out there. Yeah. Because it's so successful.
It'll be an Amazon Prime limited series. Most likely. I hope it is.
I see this book being a series very easily. Yeah. But the problem that sort of like changes it at the very end is that Julian comes back to life.
Yeah.
If you were to like do a series with this, I don't know what Julian would do. Because I can see like Yadriel like ghost hunting, you know, like saving people, you know, doing that thing with Maritza. But like, what is Julian going to do?
That's why I'm thinking limited series. Because it's like, it just ends where it ends. I mean, he comes back to life, which I don't know. I didn't really want it to happen. No. I like when people die.
I kind of wanted them to suffer.
Yeah, I like when
we had this whole spiel about like tragic gay stories.
Yeah. Like, no, we wanted it to be hard. Like, we wanted them to be really sad at the end. But you almost want it, you don't want it to work out for them because, again, like, we talked about
it's just that, like, being a ghost works for
yeah, this is a paranormal love story. And then you find out that somehow, against all odds, maybe the magic of the ritual has something to do with it, but this boy was stabbed and murdered 4 or 3 days ago, put on a cement slab in the basement dungeon cave of an old church, and his body is slowly bleeding out over time, but his body's still, like, viable? Because when he comes back to life, he just, in his body, which has been drained of blood, and somehow the heart is still beating. I don't understand the
magic.
Yeah, it's magic, but it's still, like, it's just interesting because we basically have the final fight, which I guess we could just get through completely. Yadriel's uncle Catrice fails to conjure this spirit from the underworld to come and basically destroy all the Brujah's lives and give him all the power that he never had. So he fails. Then Yadriel's like, okay, I have the opportunity now to save all of these 4 souls that are trapped in this amulet thing if I sacrifice myself. So he does. And no Bruja has ever done that. No one can bring someone back to life. But of course he does, because he's amazing.
But I also knew he was going to come back to life the whole time.
Did you really?
Yeah. There are so many clues in this book that are so obvious. They're talking about the chicken blood. They're talking about how real people blood is more powerful. Yeah. They even have a conversation with Julian. Julian's like, can you bring people back to life? And Yadriel's like, no one's been able to do that in years.
Yeah. I just figured it's like, the way they set up the rules, it's like, you want to just believe, like, he's dead. Like, his soul is here. It's attached to this necklace thing. That's how they found him. Like, he's gone. And I just liked the finality of that because
I just love ghosts.
Everyone wants to have, like, a ghost love story. And second of all, it doesn't have to be, like, a story that has a dark ending just because the character dies.
They're in a culture that celebrates
death. Yes.
So it makes sense for them to die.
What do we find out? Like, Julian's, like, a Brujo secretly because he doesn't because the mother was, like, missing. Yes. There was that inkling. Like,
potential for a sequel?
Yeah. Exactly. But like I'm saying, like, his body was drained of its blood. He was basically a corpse. Like, they said his skin was gray, his lips were blue. He was on the verge of being an actual corpse. And his soul snapped back into his body, and this boy was off running. Because he's like, no, you can't take him away from me. I'm like, where did this come from? By the end of it, you would have thought that they, like, were, like, married. I mean, they were deeply in love. Like, Julian ripped himself. He had to be held down in his hospital bed for, like, what seemed like hours by his friend and sedated because he was trying to rip. It was going to tear his stitches out to run and find Yadriel. And I'm like, oh my god, they said he's okay. And, like, he doesn't. I think it speaks to how he loves his family. And he does. And Julian is a character who doesn't have reason to trust the world. Like, he's lost a mom. He has a horrible relationship with his brother. Also lost his dad. And is, like, a street kid. So his family, he has to hold them really close. And he really wanted Yadriel to be okay. But it was, like, a lot. Right? Am I crazy? They all go to the hospital. They all get patched up. And within 24 hours, they're just back to the cemetery having a party.
Yeah.
Boom.
I almost feel like they could have skipped the hospital scene and went straight to the epilogue.
I was so excited that it was over. Maurizia ends up doing a little ritual, and, like, we know that she's going to save Yadriel, but there's a finality to it where they're, like, getting into the ambulances, and it ends on, like, this cute... I feel like it ended well. Them to get to a hospital...
Where you just get all this information you don't need.
Yeah, I didn't need to know that they're in their hospital beds, waking up. Like, I knew they weren't gonna die. Ugh, it was just a lot. And I'm like, so Julian really loves him.
I thought Luca was his boyfriend.
Luca was he not his boyfriend?
I thought he was his boyfriend.
Absolutely. But that's the thing, I'm like, what about Luca? Because he sounds so cute, which is a friend of Julian who just, like, is this little soft boy. Do you have any points you want to cover?
I think you said something about it being sort of like a coming out story. But to me, I feel like it's not a coming out story.
I think I was wrong in saying that.
Because he is so visible, he's so open. It starts where I feel like a lot of YA books would end, where, like, you get the whole coming out story, the whole struggle of keeping it a secret, from being in the closet. This is not that at all.
No.
Which is refreshing to me because I think, obviously, like, books in general follow trends, and we're seeing this big influx of, like, books about gay stories, in YA specifically, that are all about coming out, because that is an issue for a lot of, you know, young adults reading, you know.
Well, that's why I think I love that this is, like, sort of about the nuances of, like, the trans identity.
There's so many more obstacles that come after coming out, even if you have the most supportive family support system in the world.
It's a perfect book for, like, just queer kids who want to, like, see, oh my god, like, this person's just talking about wearing their binder, and it's not like, this is a binder, and this is how, no, like, the family just is, for the most part, chill. But they haven't changed their way of thinking.
They talk about the dead name, but they don't ever use the dead name.
No,
like, you don't find out what the dead name is.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people who are, like, cis straight people, they have this weird, like, cruel fascination. They
put your identity on the transition itself and not just, like, what I'm presenting to you is what you're getting. Cis people aren't owed anything.
Yeah.
And this book is like, yeah, I don't owe... It's not for the white gays. It's not for the cis gays. It's not for any... It's really just, like, a picture of an identity that isn't represented, and it shows you this is just how it should be navigated. What is gender identity in this context? That's the superpower of this book.
It's like,
that was the plan.
As if the gender binary wasn't so strict.
Yeah.
Like, in general, like, this book puts even more of an emphasis on, like...
Like, you feel bad for Yadriel, but also, like, he doesn't really let you feel bad for him, because he's, like, very strong. But you realize you're, like, waking up in this body and knowing that you have to now navigate, like, a whole centuries of culture of what men... It's not just in America, it's in this community where so much is put on gender. That's incredibly difficult. And he's so brave and he's so cute. Julian has showed him, because, like, he says, like, Maurizia and Uncle Catrice, like, understand me. They've always been my allies, but I had to explain to them everything. Like, Maurizia was not educated on this. Obviously, the uncle wasn't. But Julian's just like, okay... Period. So where's the food? Like, what's next? Like, can we go? Like, it's not a caveat to him understanding Yadriel at all. It's just like, oh, that's it. And I think, like, for a trans person to find someone who they find attractive, they have chemistry with, there's no uphill battle at all to be like, yes, I am trans and that's why XYZ. It's just, it is what it is. That's part of the beauty of this book too. It just illustrates what trans people in relationships.
I also
the potential for having that. And
I also
happy.
Appreciate that this book doesn't really delve into the toxicity in the gay community itself.
There's enough books on that. I think Aidan Thomas was like, this is not for the gays.
Because I think it's like a little too complicated for a YA novel to get into
the nuances of what's so toxic about the toxic masculinity that runs through gay culture. The issues at hand here, like, they're young. They're not on Fire Island. Like, they're not, like, in New York City. Like, they're teens in LA. And really, I don't read books about trans people ever. So that's what this had its plan to do, and it did it. It didn't need to be for cis people to understand. It didn't need to be for gays to be like...
We didn't even have to understand it.
No, we didn't. So this whole episode,
nothing
pointless.
matters.
But we liked it, and we learned stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, I
liked it, if only because it was so different, so new, so visible, so diverse, so specific.
And can I say, like, it did not pander to some weird diversity quota. Okay, they're gay, or they're queer, or they're this, or they're that, and didn't feel forced.
You can tell a lot about a book by how much you can picture the fan art of it.
Yeah.
I could, like, log into AO3 and read fanfiction about this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what AO3 is. Is that bad? Maybe it's better if I don't know what it is. Maybe that says something about me and something about you.
Aidan Thomas, if you're listening.
If you're listening, do you want to be our friend? For real, like, I love this book and it's brilliantly done. And I think the fact that it's a YA novel makes it just, like, better because kids or young adults, whatever, should be reading it.
There's a different set of problems for every age group, and this one tackles...
I liked that this wasn't that mature. Yeah. It was just, like, fun.
It's fun.
And
it deals with such serious issues, world problems, cultural, conflicts that, like, it just needs to be fun, too.
I love ghost stories. And I think, like, for a culture that's all about, like, celebrating death and ghosts, and I'm someone who likes paranormal things, I didn't know anything about this. I'm glad I finally read a book that's like, oh, well, there's this whole culture of, like, magic that surrounds, like, spirits and, like, they live in a cemetery, and it's like, I've never seen, like, a medium where this is presented. I can't name a TV show, really, or a movie, or, like, I just said, like, a book that really is able to go into depth about what this culture is, how it works, and it's also just, like, relatable, fun, easy, and it's gay, and it's gay, and it's gay, and it's queer. Like, what?
Imagine being trans, male, gay, Latinx.
Like, period. Like,
and reading this book and feeling so incredibly seen.
And it's magic.
And it's magic, and it's fun, and you get a gay boyfriend.
Whether or not this story was literally about magic, it was magical. Aidan Thomas, thank you for this story, and I hope you hear this.
I hope you hear this, and you listen to what we said.
Yeah, you better listen to us, because we know everything. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.